Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Smart Home Collective. Today I'm delighted to be joined by two guests. On my virtual left I've got Bearded Tinker or BT, and on my virtual right I have Gaz or Gareth Jones. BT, very prominent on YouTube, almost 7,000 YouTube subscribers, 147 videos, and as somebody claims he's not much of a tech guy, but given I've seen him integrate a thermal receipt printer into Home Assistant, to me he's a bit of a tech guy. Gaz on the other side is how do you describe you? A Viking-looking style bearded ginger from Manchester. He spends his time on Twitter haggling the likes of Paul Hibbert, Brian from Automate Your Life, and he's probably one of the best supporters I've seen in the home tech online community. And he's actually dabbled in the content creation himself with Don't Fear the Gear. Hello, gents.
Hello.
Hi, Ellie.
So in terms of, this is obviously the episode 1, so our listeners aren't going to know much of the format and the approach we're taking. So the format going forward, I will always strive to have at least 2 guests on the podcast. I think it makes sense to have 3 people having a bit of conversation. So these podcasts will never be myself rambling about tech. The frequency ultimately will be driven by the guest availability and really what's newsworthy items in the smart home tech space. We will, most part, talk about what the guests are working on, what they've got coming up, and give them a bit of chance to plug their upcoming content. So BT, I'm hoping later on you'll plug some of your upcoming content. And then at the end of each podcast, I'll throw in a few little questions to try and test their brain reflexes. You're good to go. BT's giving me the eyes. He's a bit unsure now. It's too late to back out. So BT, over to you first. Sorry guys, on you go.
No, I was going to say I'm still trying to live up to the intro that you've given me there of being a bearded Viking and having no YouTube channel, one video.
Well, you never know, guys. At the end of this, you might be inspired to do something about that. I'll leave that there. Oh. BT, look at you first. So for the viewers, we've obviously had a conversation before this, but I think it'd be quite good for I'm saying the viewers, the listeners, to understand a little bit about why you started your channel, and then on from that, what is really the brains of your smart home?
Well, the real reason why I started the channel, not how I got permission from my family and my teens. We talked about that, but that's a different story. The real reason was I had a lot of colleagues that were into home automation. A lot. We were sitting each morning before the work, drinking coffee and talking about stuff. And each day, a new topic would bring. Oh, listen, can you do this? I said, yes, you have to do. I cannot follow you. Can you write me down? I said, no. And really, the reason why I started recording videos was I've seen that a lot of people wanted to tackle something, but they sometimes needed hands. Maybe not 100%, but in the part of the way they wanted to do something, they wanted some help or assurance to show them how some things work. So that's the reason why I started to record those videos. And it was really fun ride. I've been doing it now for a year and a half. And it is hard to keep up with the content, to find something that would be both appealing to me and to the viewers. But I really do enjoy it. I love it.
And that comes across in the videos. I must admit, you're very passionate on your videos.
Oh, thank you. I know that people when watch my videos probably think that I'm so uptight and I do not smile and things like that. But somehow all my videos ended up like a teacher, serious. I will now try to convey what I was thinking and things like that. But really, I cannot stand still for 5 seconds. I always have to have a joke or two. So it's really hard for me to, not pretend, but to try to convey a message. Because if you're, let's call it more serious, you can follow tutorials, press left button, press right button. If I would just end up making jokes, then I would go in totally opposite way.
And in terms of what's driving, what's the brains of your home?
It is Home Assistant, Home Assistant. And I think that so far, by looking all the other systems that are currently on the market, both the premium ones, meaning that you have to pay something, and open source, Home Assistant is definitely most versatile. It has extremely large community. It is not that easy to install, no matter what people tell you. It can be installed in 20 minutes. I was listening to the podcast about Home Assistant today, and they were talking how it is easy now to do something. It's still not for the non-technical users. You still do require some technical skills, not much. I would really like that to be changed, to have installation file, press one button, and that's it.
I agree. And recently, my brother-in-law has been, I think, given COVID and lockdown with everything, I think a lot of people's attentions have turned internally within their own house. What can they do? Speaking to my brother-in-law, he's getting quite excited around what potentially can do in the house. And he asked the question of, should I do Home Assistant? My initial reaction was yes, but I hesitated. And it's all, and Gaz, I know you're probably going to be kind of raising your eyebrows in terms of should you get involved? Because Home Assistant, as fantastic as it is, there's always that hesitant, yes, because of the challenges at times.
That's right. If you try to remove emotions from opinion, it is, in my opinion, the best there is. But it's still not for everybody. You still need to tinker with something. A new release can be, you may install the new release and 5 seconds later, for example, your lights could stop working. And then you have to spend 15, 20, 30 minutes to debug what's going on with the lights.
Although that's got better. Over the last 2 years, 2 years ago, I felt with every update, it would break loads of stuff. I think now very much it is just tinkering.
Breaking changes now really are scarce and do not impact the system like they were before. But for example, something changed, I don't know in media player with the last version or 2 versions ago, and all my automations that result in a verbal action through the speakers stopped working. And I first didn't notice that for a couple of days because you get accustomed to those messages saying front door is open, temperature, blah, blah, blah. You just tend to not listen or not hear them anymore. So one day I was like, I'm missing something. And then I figured out that for the last couple of days, I was missing verbal notifications. And then I had to go back to all my scripts, everything to change just 2 letters or 2 words. Yeah.
And what's it running on?
Sorry, I cannot say it because of the Frank. It's running on the Synology system. I'm running unsupported version, and I'm guilty for the. I'm partially guilty for the unsupported version.
You've lost my sympathy now.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I'm running on Synology because I think that. That's also one of the reasons why I went for the Home Assistant. I hate when you have to buy something to get something that's not exactly what you bought. For example, to get Philips Hue lights, you had to buy a Hue hub. To get the IKEA lights, you had to buy IKEA hub or any other hub you had. So you had to have something to have something else. And I always wanted to not recycle, but reuse the equipment that I have. And Synology is something that I'm using myself. And I wanted to have only one system working 24/7 for the home automation. So that's the reason. And I will definitely be working still on the Synology, although it has become a bit hard to go in direction where I was currently going.
Yeah. Would you ever make a change away from Synology?
No. I will. The worst thing is I'll probably buy a new Synology to overcome the problem with my existing Synology. But yeah,
fair enough.
Compensating.
I like it. Gaz, obviously you're not home assistant lover, but what really sparked your interest in the smart home tech? And I know you've been involved with the smart home community for a number of years now. So what was the beginning?
This is where my partner at the time probably kicks herself. So I'd always been into tech, but the smart home stuff, the first thing that really interested me was when the first generation of the Echo Dot was released in the UK, and frankly, I think my other half didn't quite know what to get me for. I can't remember if it was my birthday or for Christmas, and there was a deal on at the local electrical store, and I think it was say £30 for a £50 device.
It was the same for me. That's how I started.
Yeah, exactly that. And so there was no great intention behind it. I'd love to say that I'm a Machiavellian genius, but that is not the case. I could stand here and twiddle my mustache, but I wouldn't live up to it in terms of being an evil genius. But what I would say is that quickly having it in the house, the novelty of having the speaker there and being able to play music through it, I did, like most early adopters, when it started to become more mass market. I think that's the main thing that people were utilising it for. What time is it? What's the weather? You know, those sorts of things. It was fairly early on in terms of there weren't a huge array of skills, but it quickly became something that I thought, well, like I say, I quite like problem solving, and I've got 2 children who have got a penchant for leaving lights on in different rooms, and maybe I can start to do something about that. So it started by buying some smart bulbs and some smart plugs, and there was a time where I would sit there and I'd be able to use my voice to tell it to turn the dining room off, whilst my children were sat in the living room with me, as a way to passively aggressively tell them that maybe they should have turned the dining room lights off. But then there was again a deal at the same electrical store, probably the Christmas after. I think it was actually my birthday when I got the Echo Dot, and then I think at Christmas I bought the Samsung Smart Things Hub. I think it must be the first generation Samsung Smart Things Hub, and I didn't really look back from then. What I found is that having a visual interface, and I have to say I'm still a fan of the classic Smart Things application, although it's been deprecated now, and actually the functionality in the newer version is better than the older version. But as a visual interface, I have to say I still.
And we may actually come on to that, guys, in one of the news items.
I will not get ahead of myself then. But in essence, I think once I got the Smart Things Hub and kind of the visual representation of off and on status, you know, lighting, brightness, all those things, temperatures for TRV valves, all those sorts of things, I found it really quite impactful for me, because at a glance I could tell what was going on in my home. And as somebody whose day job is working, creating and understanding clinical data, I quite liked the feed of data that I was getting back. It's fairly high level data, obviously, but in terms of energy usage and those sorts of things, I found that quite useful and quite interesting. And I did the classic thing of I got very excited about solving problems that I had, to the point where I saturated my home with smart home gear, to the extent where I started buying smart home gear and then inventing a problem to solve to justify the fact that I'd bought the smart home gear. So luckily I've been weaning myself and making tactical purchases for the last 12 months or so. I've gotten out of that novelty phase that lasted far longer than it probably should have. I think for about 2 or 3 years I was consuming every new different device that came out of the woodwork. But what I would say is, and I've said this in previous conversations with other smart home content creators, still the automations that work best for me are those really passive ones, those motion sensors, where now I don't need to tell the dining room lights to turn off because a motion sensor will do that for me when the children have left the dining room. So those are the ones that I think when you first start out in the smart home, you're quite excited about triggering everything with your voice because it's cool, isn't it? It's Star Trek. It's what all us nerds really want to be able to do. Look how cool I am doing this. But I think as you live in a smart home, the novelty of that starts to wear off, and the automations and the multiple triggers and multiple actions triggering off a single trigger, I think that is actually kind of a connoisseur's version of a smart home. You start to have to take less actions to begin with to trigger many things to happen. And I think that's why at a point in time, IFTTT was really very popular, because again, it was that one action that triggers many.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, thanks both. So before we get into the news items, one question for each of you. It's the same question. So Gaz, I'll start with yourself. You've obviously said you had lots of purchases over the years. What's been your single most underwhelming or disappointing purchase where you thought this was going to be it? This is going to be all the shining, dancing addition to the house, but it ended up as not.
In a drawer. So I've got one uncontroversial answer and a second controversial answer, and they're equally disappointing for different reasons. One of the very first devices I bought was a Wemo bulb, and I pretty soon realized that it was just very, very unstable. It struggled to maintain a connection, and given that that was the very first smart bulb I bought, in fact, I think it was, how bad it was nearly stopped me building a smart home from that point on. But frankly, because I'd bought the SmartThings hub, or I was considering getting a hub, I thought, well, I can't decide this on the back of one particular device maker. So that Wemo bulb was really not very good, and it was consigned to a drawer really quite early. And then I started buying into the Philips Hue ecosystem, and whilst one of my good friends in the smart home world, Mr. Hibbert, might disagree passionately with me, I've never really had a problem with the Philips Hue ecosystem. I have been frustrated that I've had to buy a second generation hub or a third generation hub to do certain things, but that I think a lot of tech is that the smart home world isn't really different from most of the tech in the generations will move on and things start to become deprecated. The second purchase is really going to make Mr. Paul Hibbert from Hibbert's Home Tech probably bristle, in that the second one that I bought that I was disappointed with was actually on his recommendation from his videos, was the Broadlink RM Pro.
Oh, be careful here, because I'm a fan. On you go.
Well, and this is why I say controversial. So thankfully, Paul's not on this call, but I do think I might meet some resistance from you, gentlemen. Frankly, because I've been using the SmartThings ecosystem at that point in time, the biggest kind of functionality that was missing that disappointed me was being able to report the state of a device. And I think that is possibly why the Broadlink will eternally, until that is overcome, will eternally be seen as a tinkerer's device, if you like, a smart home beyond an enthusiast, or maybe rightfully termed as an enthusiast, but as a mainstream consumer, I don't think the RM Pro hits that sweet spot, because it's not got a visual interface that allows you to see when something's turned on and when something's turned off, or it didn't the last time.
That's fair enough. I think that's fair enough, because for the most part, all it's doing is sending signals. It's not really integrated with that device?
Yeah, in terms of its versatility, I think it's a great device. I just think that lack of a polished user experience, for want of a better phrase, I suppose, a user experience, a lack of that ability to see the state of a device, I think it will continue to be a barrier to mainstream adoption. I bought it because as a Yorkshireman, Lee will know this, and as a Scotsman, he might say that he's got the same national identity as my regional identity of a Yorkshireman, but for BT's reference, Yorkshireman, which is where I'm from originally, I consider to be type-listed public. Hopefully you won't have to bleep that out, Lee. And the RM Pro being a really quite inexpensive device, and the ability for what it could control, I was really, really quite excited to buy a device that was relatively cheap, but quite fully featured in terms of what it could control.
BT, I'm curious, counter argument.
Yeah, no. I agree completely. The lucky thing is that somehow a lot of devices end up on my desk that I didn't buy. For example, I have a colleague at my office who likes to buy cheap stuff of AliExpress. Okay, I also buy a lot of weird, cheap, unnecessary, unneeded, but it looks whatever. And he brought me the RM4 Pro, and he gave me over the weekend to test it and to see how it integrates. And after 2 hours of mostly successfully integrated Home Assistant, I said, okay, so now I have a new remote that I cannot control sometimes because of line of sight and things like that. And I suggest, no, those type of devices are not for me. If I want to go for a device, I want to have a device that will be that will not be one by communication, but it will have a feedback, as you said. And unfortunately, everything on the infrared just sends data, and it doesn't care if the other hand has received it and done something about it or not. So I also had the Logitech before, Logitech Harmony, but before those smarter ones, it was large with a display. And that was the biggest problem. I programmed it. For example, you press one button, it turns the TV on, amplifier on, all the sound systems, everything is on. Then comes my wife, directs it in the wall, at the other wall, press the button, and it completely messes everything up because it thinks that everything is on, none is on. I cannot switch the channels because, yeah. So that's why because of the previous experience, I said no infrared devices in my house. But to single out what is the most disappointing purchase will be very hard. For example, I have a 3D printer and I bought it because why not? And as every owner of 3D printer, I can say this is the best device I ever bought. I bought Ender 3 Creality, which is the most common, I wouldn't say the most popular, but maybe the most common printer, low budget printer. I paid about 180, 90 bucks, something like that. And then I put around 200 or 300 euros more of upgrades into printer to get it working as good as I was expecting it to be working at the first place. But don't get me wrong, I still print on it. I still use it. I sometimes even overuse it in terms of, let's see if I can do something and print, then I spend more money on the electricity material that it would be just to go out and buy a box or something. But I'm happy because it allows me to, feel useful, to feel the device is useful and that I'm useful in using it. And the most disappointing device was, you wouldn't believe, a very cheap device, Xiaomi vibration sensor. I had so high expectations of that device. I ordered it, and I cannot use those words here because nobody knows who will be listening. But I was really, really disappointed. For example, okay, just example. So this is vibration sensor. I tried vibrating it with the hand, no problem. You can shake it and it recognizes that. If I throw it from the window, it will recognize that I've thrown it out of the window. We had 6.4 earthquake. It didn't register anything. I know that this is not a seismic device, but pictures on the walls were moving for 30, 40 centimeters, and this vibration sensor didn't feel those vibrations. Okay, maybe if we get 7, 8, or 9, maybe that will work then. Then I said, okay, I tried to put it on the meter for the gas. You know that they are old analog ones, but they do click every now and then. So I said, this has to be some kind of nothing. Now I'm keeping it on the piano of my daughter, and I wanted to do automation that would track how many hours or minutes per day she was playing. No, it doesn't register. You know, it's sitting in the middle of the piano. I know. So a lot of people will now say, you have option to customize the sensitivity. I did customize the sensitivity. Maybe the one I got is, well, not performing correctly, but unfortunately, I had, because of all the good things that I got from the Xiaomi devices, from the motion sensors, buttons, temperature sensors, whatever I bought from them was really good. I was really expecting something much better. So in terms of the single device, which really, I don't care. I paid down $6, $7, $8 for it. I said, okay, yeah, whatever word. But I really had higher hopes for it. And come on, 6.4 magnitude earthquake, nothing.
that might be a sales pitch for it, though, BT. The earthquake-proof vibration sensor.
Yeah, that's right.
Big seller in San Francisco.
It's interesting because the only time I've seen that device used, when you look at all the content that's out there on YouTube, people only use it for washing machines and dryers. And it's only ever used for washing machines and dryers. That's it.
Yeah, that I made a small poll asking people for what to use those. And the only answers were really for the washer, or dishwasher, or the dryer. That's it. Maybe I had wrong expectations. I always take that into account, but from the vibration sensor, I really did want to get, vibration readings, whatever.
Understandable. Mine would be the Xiaomi Cube.
Oh, why? I have it. I don't use it. Sorry, but I want to hear.
The novelty wears off very quickly. So, Gaz, are you familiar with the Xiaomi Cube?
I can't say that I am, but it sounds as though I'm not going to be.
No, I wouldn't bother.
But you have to have it. It's such a nice addition on the table. It doesn't. I don't use it for anything anymore. And sorry, and the only
automation.
Yeah, and since it does register vibrations, if I put my legs on the table, it turns off kitchen lights. And that's the only time I know it's working, because it is really versatile device, and all of my friends bought it. But as you said, we use it for a week or two, and that's it.
So it's a little cube, Gaz. And I don't know, inch by inch squared or cubed, very, very, very small. And the concept is, you can shake it and it does an activity. So you assign different activities to a shake, to a twist. If it's on a desk, you can move it forward. I think my problem was I assigned so many activities to it, I lost track of what each blooming activity did. And it would sit in the kitchen counter. My wife would say, "That's hideous. Why is it sitting there?" Well, because it does great things. Just use it. So she would shake it and the wrong thing would happen. She would move it with the wrong. She would turn it very, very quickly. It was a day of tinkering and enjoying and playing about with it. And it's, very underwhelming.
The concept, the idea is great because you have one device that can do 10, 12 actions, but you have to have a list near it to remember what you assign to each of those. And
tasks. I do wonder if that was just Xiaomi testing the water with how many sensors can we put into one device. Yeah. Look what we've done. Let's stick it into mass market.
I think so. One of my favorite devices that I was saying about I've got 3 Fabaro motion sensors, and I would highly recommend them. They look like the Eye of Sauron, so they look cool if nothing else. But they can tell when there's vibration, and it's got tamper. It's got a tamper alarm on it. It can check the lumens in the room that they're in for how much light there is. It's a temperature sensor, as well as being a motion sensor. So it was relatively expensive when I bought it, but in terms of the amount of use I've had out of it and the stability that it's maintained, I think for the 3 in total, I ended up paying probably just over £100 in total. And it's the best. Well, the £99 for the SmartThings hub and the £120 for the 3 Fabaro motion sensors are probably the best smart home purchases I've ever made in terms of value for money. Just in terms of the kind of how cool something sounds, one of the coolest marketed things I've ever seen and I've bought and is still in the box, it's not even come out of the wrapper that the box is in, is the Fabaro Swipe. I don't know if you've ever seen the Fabaro Swipe.
No, never heard of it.
Oh, well, don't blame me if you end up going out and buying one. So it is basically, it looks like a picture frame and it's got sensors built into it, and you can literally put a picture in front of it. In the marketing, it looks as though it's an LED screen. It's not. It's literally a photo that you put in it. But you can gesture control different things. And as you were saying, there's multiple different functionalities, or should I say, multiple different automations that you can trigger dependent on what gesture you actually carry out. And according to the marketing, at least, you can even mount it under a table and wave your hand over the table to make automations happen. The advert that I saw that made me want it was a priest in a church pretending he was performing a miracle by waving his hand over the Bible and all the lights turning off. And then he turned the page and this Fabaro Swipe was just between the pages. So it was excellent marketing. And I have to say, Fabaro, in terms of beautiful devices and in terms of well-marketed devices, Fabaro are fantastic. But I've just never had it out of the box because to integrate it into SmartThings, you had to have a custom device handler. And I tried utilising the one that had been shared on the UK forums, and I just couldn't seem to get it to take in the IDE, let alone actually before I got the device out of the box and started doing anything with it. So I just never unboxed it. So if one of your listeners out there or any of you guys want to try it, you're more than welcome. I will ship it to you and give it a go, because I would love to see it in action. The only cost it will cost to you is I'd ask you to video it in action, and then I will immediately become remorseful that I've let go of it, and you can charge me £200 to pay it back.
Brilliant, thanks both. Right, news items then. So I think Paul Hibbert's going to start charging us for the number of times we've mentioned his name. I wanted to include this item because I think it's quite topical, and it's with all Paul's videos, he's always putting stuff out there to make you think. So Paul's latest video was 5 reasons the smart home hub is dead. Thought-provoking to start with, but he actually covered a number of items. And
5 reasons.
5 reasons. What did I say?
No, he made 6, but he
made 6.
5.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, okay. The call-outs for me was, first of all, Z-Wave is dead. SmartThings is dead. Google is dead. And long live the choip, potentially. So there was a lot of items to cover. I think for me, the two big call-outs was Z-Wave is dead. So Z-Wave, right now, for the tinkerers, and potentially even not for the tinkerers, it's pretty big. Not as big as Zigbee, I would probably say, but it's pretty big. And I think, given what we're seeing with the Zigbee Alliance leading the way with chip, with Thread coming down the line, are we now starting to see the end of Z-Wave or Z-Wave for our American listeners? BT, what's your thoughts?
That's a hard one, and unfortunately, I have to agree. But comparison he did with the VHS and Betamax, is really there's the same thing that happened with
a fantastic comparison. I really thought.
And the same thing happened, but the lifespan of the product was much shorter. Was the Blu-ray versus the HD DVD.
Yep.
So you always end up with only one technology, and the only thing that makes the technology crucial is technology pop up is when a lot of people are buying it. And when you make it affordable or available in terms of the device that already has it embedded inside itself, you just have advantage that it's really hard to overcome. If you look at the forums, if you look at what the people are saying, it's like Android versus iOS. It's the Z-Wave against the Zigbee. And those are really two different standards. They do same things, but they are different standards. And I understand why a lot of people, mostly in the States, use Z-Wave devices. If you look at the EU, probably somebody will now kick me for saying this, but I think that majority of the devices in the EU is Zigbee devices.
That's what I feel. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not seeing stats, but that's my feeling.
That's my feeling, and that's my opinion. And there isn't a single. Zigbee has a lot of issues that Z-Wave doesn't have, but the adoption of big players and putting the big players putting hubs or routers or coordinators inside their devices really will be the tipping point for this. And I think that he really had a good presumption of possibility. I'm not saying maybe tomorrow they will add both standards. I just doubt it, because if you look, both the Amazon and Google are in the Z-Wave Alliance. They are both inside the Chip Alliance, and they are both inside the Thread Alliance. So this is the direction they are going. They are both announcing Chip, and Chip is part of the Zigbee standard, or Zigbee as a body will be controlling the standard for the chip. So you see how slowly the boat is turning in that direction.
And I think your comparison with actually Blu-ray is good. So Blu-ray won because of Sony. Sony made the decision to include Blu-ray in all of its devices over to
PlayStation 3 or whatever was at the time.
I think given the fact the investment from the likes of Amazon, from Google, it's signaling the way that potentially Z-Wave over the next couple of years will start to erode.
Shrink. I would just say shrink. I wouldn't say that it will never disappear, but it will definitely start to shrink.
I mean, I'm going to throw a kind of an additional, and pardon the pun, thread in here, is that you could say that when Z-Wave came about and Zigbee came about, you would have thought that the infrared protocol would become a thing of the past, but it's still there and it's still got a use. And I think with Z-Wave, there will still be a use case for it. I think it'll become more difficult to purchase devices that are solely Z-Wave, but what does it matter if it's not solely Z-Wave, as long as that is one of the protocols? The other protocols remain unused, but they remain there if you want to go down with the.
That's true. And I think all the off-the-shelf LED strips that you've seen in shops and Amazon are all infrared remotes. They're not Zigbee LED strips, they're infrared. So that's a fair shout. And I think RF still kicks about. So
yeah.
I think you're probably right. Z-Wave will exist in some form. Will it be as popular and renowned as it is right now? My gut feel is probably not.
Can I stick my nose in about smart things?
Well, actually, I'm glad you're saying that, guys, because that was the next thing coming down the line. Is smart things dead?
Smart things, I do believe, is the most prevalent smart home hub on the planet, as far as I'm aware, in terms of an actual physical hub. The last thing I saw, I'm sure, smart things was that. So ordinarily, something that's got a very large user base is the thing that's most difficult to deprecate. But what I'm looking at here is that Amazon are building those Zigbee hubs and have been building Zigbee hubs into the full-size Echoes, and then a lot of the other Echo products now. They've been building those Zigbee hubs into those devices for a while, and Amazon is all about saturating the market with smart speakers. And I think quite a lot of people probably don't even understand what the Zigbee hub being in their device does for them. They just simply know that when they tell that light bulb to turn on, it turns on. And it could be by voodoo for all they care. It's the user experience that it does what I want it to do. I think Amazon doing that means that Zigbee is in rude health and will continue to be the most prevalent standard for a good time to come. I think Google are a very interesting one in that they, as far as I'm aware, and I may be opening myself up to ridicule here, is there a hub? Well, in the Nest hub, which I've vented my spleen about several times, as Paul in his latest video, it isn't a hub. It's not got a hub built into it. As the Nest Hub Max got it,
I believe it does.
Yeah. So that's one product that I don't own. But Google, as far as I'm aware, have only got one device that actually houses a true smart a Zigbee hub in it, and it's their most expensive device. I don't think the Nest Audios have got a Zigbee hub in them, as far as I'm aware. And they've pushed into a market that is, are they about £99? I think there's the Nest Audio. So the cost of entry to get a Zigbee hub has been brought down by Amazon, and I think Google, I'm surprised they haven't tried to counter that, because I think as one of the other smart home guys who I think they possibly all watch or all interact with, Craig from Craig's Tech Talk, he keeps saying he wants the entry price for Amazon smart home products and Google products to go up, because actually the amount of hardware that you can get into a device that is £30, £50, $50, there's a limitation to it, and actually you are putting a ceiling on how clever that device can be. And I think with Google, that's why they've primarily gone down the Wi-Fi based protocol, because it helps them keep their devices cheap. What Google have got, however, is that they've got Android, and actually you can build some level of kind of brains into the handheld device, which is going to be your mobile device. If anybody still buys Android tablets, I'm not sure. So I'm kind of surprised they haven't gone down the basis of almost like a HomeKit type approach of having an Android device being able to be a control console that also has the kind of the protocols built into it, but they haven't. So Google are a bit of a strange one. It feels a little bit muddled to me.
Paul's released a number of videos which has stressed that Google just seem all over in this space. I mean, that Nest Audio, £99 with no Zigbee built in, yet a HomePod Mini, is thread enabled. It's a very, very strange game Google are playing.
It's
like they're sustaining, waiting for something, like holding back. I don't know why, because really they have the great ecosystem. As you said, if you look at the Amazon was really, okay, so now I said something and probably somebody will start to fight somewhere in the comments later on. Amazon is really built on top of Android. If you look at the Fire devices, whatever they did, they use this ecosystem. So you are the owner of the whole ecosystem, but you still lack the, I wouldn't call it creativity. They can be creative. They did, okay, now Stadia for the gaming, which is a great idea. It flopped once again. I wouldn't say flop, but it didn't live up to expectations. But they have really great thinkers that are able to create wonderful products, and I do agree with you. If you look at the minis, they cost, I don't know, you can get them for 20 euros or something like that on a sale. If it would be 30 euros, probably it would have a local AI for the voice recognition. You can have faster responses. You can put, as you said, Zigbee inside, or Z-Wave, or whatever, something. Bluetooth, even Bluetooth, add Bluetooth to pair the speakers, whatever, do something, add something. I know they're thinking less is more, but not if you really cut all the corners.
Yeah. So guys, I'm going to put you in the spot. Back to the original question. That was a big detour to get back to the original question. Is Smart Things dead? Not now, but do you believe there's life in it over the next 3 to 4 years?
I believe as a platform, it has got legs, and I think it will continue. I think it's shown the way to build a smart home control ecosystem, and I think it's still pretty, not completely unrivaled, but I think it still does a better job than any other that I've seen in action. But I may be biased because I haven't had significant use of anything other than kind of, if you could even call it an ecosystem harmony, and the Lady A and the Google Home type devices. I don't think Smart Things as a platform is dead. I think as a device, as a hardware product, I know AOTech have taken over them. Frankly, as far as I can tell, they've literally changed they've scraped off Samsung on the hubs and drawn on AOTech. I don't think that they've taken the devices on to the next generation. I know they've only just acquired them, so that may be something that happens in time. I think they may get one more generation out of that hub potentially, but I'm not convinced that it will continue to be a hardware company. And I guess the question then becomes, if they're no longer building hubs, what becomes the control center of Smart Things? So I don't think Smart Things as a brand is dead, but there's going to be a decision to take about, okay, how do we control the home through whatever Smart Things becomes?
Yeah.
So that was a very ambiguous response, Lee. I understand that, but I think
you should be a politician.
I think it's a fairly complicated position. Whatever you've heard about me on Clapham Common is not.
I think the big question mark for me is where's Samsung making money here? So they're not making the hardware. They're hosting the. Is it cloud? They're still hosting the cloud here, but is there a subscription for Smart Things? So what's Samsung to gain still being in this space?
So it would. Frankly, my view on it is look at what Samsung's heritage is coming into the smart home world. They bought Smart Things as opposed to creating it within. Samsung are largely a consumer electronic device maker. I think Amazon got into the smart speaker world, frankly, to begin with, to make it easier to order their products. I think they were surprised by the popularity of the smart speakers, and actually, I think it's become a sector for them in of themselves. And I don't want to preface one of the other, I think maybe topics that we potentially would consider discussing, but I think Samsung have come into it as a way to kind of bring a more luxury device, a more luxury white good, if you like. So there's a Samsung hub fridge now, which looks absolutely stunning, and I would love to have one of those in my home.
It does look good.
But I've only got 2 kidneys, and I'm not willing to sell one of them to buy it. But I honestly think that the strategy from early on was to introduce smart home and kind of low-level devices, and then build up to being able to double the price of those consumer white goods that Samsung have sold in many, many millions of units each year, and kind of build it into that, and then have those, what were, with no disrespect meant to the sector, dumb devices, creating something that's smart that didn't necessarily anybody really felt needed to be smart, but boy, it's cool. And I think that, I honestly think that was part of the strategy.
Yeah, and I agree with the initial strategy. It's the longevity now. So they've not made, there's not enough money in the hardware, which they clearly felt, so they've outsourced it to AOTech. They're in a space now where they're still hosting the Smart Things platform, There's no subscription fees. So
even for the mobile phones, they're still selling. If you look at, okay, now people will start, scraping up the teardowns of the mobile phones and how much really does a mobile phone cost to produce. But you forget always there is a R&D, and I do not know the cost of research and development for that product. But I wouldn't say, I think that they are trying to do something that Huawei has done, and they try to move into the intellectual property in terms of the software and say, okay, those, and if you look of the companies that are supporting the chip and the how it's called, the other standard for the wireless, the Samsung is on the list of supporters, and they are producing modules. So they will be, even if you buy non-Samsung SmartThings device, it will still have a piece of Samsung inside. And at the end, they make mobile phones probably because they are making LCDs and GSM chips and whatever, so they can just pack everything in and sell the mobile phone itself. It will be probably easier for them to white label them. And you want your own brand, here is the hardware, and we will make a hardware for you.
I mean, there's been many a theory about why Tesla are pouring money into developing cars that not many people can afford, and ultimately that the driving strategy behind it is to prove that electrical cars can work, and the Tesla's real game here is that they're going to be the number one battery or engine provider for whoever builds an electric vehicle, and that it's not about selling the device, the Tesla car, the cool and the great, but the luxury product. It becomes about creating a market, creating a space to then be the hardware seller behind it. Intel, without straying into things that I don't know a great deal about, if you're the person who makes the chip, if you're the person that makes the brains or the engine or whichever way you want to term it, you're going to sell massive amounts of units without actually really needing to get into the consumer game, because you're not doing that front end selling, are you? You're supplying to other device makers, and the cost that you accrue by having a distribution outlet of shops and floor space, you don't have that if you're the person who's making the pieces that go into another device. So I think, BT, you're absolutely correct in that I think SmartThings or Samsung in this instance are likely to be in it for the long haul because of that.
Okay, good.
You look at Google, they had mobile phones. Nobody remembers what mobile phones Nexus is, but they were really showcases for what technology can do and what other producers can do. Okay, a lot of people bought it. They were expensive because they said, okay, if you want to have premium, buy a premium. But I would never imagine Google going into the production of mobile phones. It's a hassle. You have to support them. You have to, it's just not, software companies cannot handle hardware, and hardware companies cannot handle the software. Those are two different worlds.
Well,
that's a topic for another night, I think.
Okay.
I was going to say that sounds like an episode 2.
Yeah, I was going to say
that.
There was me thinking we'd get through a couple of news items, but this one's been this has been quite juicy. I had wanted to cover Thread tonight, but I think given the time, we're not far off an hour. I think Thread's going to be one for another night. Very, very quick, in 10 seconds or so, each of you, BT, thoughts on Thread, initial gut feels.
When I read somewhere,
when
I see IPv6 anywhere, I call it a scam. Because IPv6 was sold to the people as a standard that would allow you to have your own IP range, to have your own house inside that IP range. So I can buy what today I cannot buy. I cannot buy IP address, public IP address, IPv4. I cannot buy because it doesn't exist anymore. It's all sold out. So IPv6 was brought to allow us to have our own home devices if we want exposed, but if we were not internally. And here again, I read all the connections, all the devices are connected to the public cloud all the time. I value my privacy. Maybe there are no hidden agendas here. Maybe they're just doing like so you can have a much easier connectivity, whatever. But what about security? Do I really want to have all my devices exposed to the internet all the time? And then again, I'm not the owner of the IP address. I'm owner of my flat. And what's going on inside of my flat, if I don't break rules, for example, laws, it's mine. And I want to keep it that way. I like the standard. I like the idea. Thread with a chip, because they are one on top of the other. One is the application layer. The other is transportation layer. But they are just too open for me.
Okay. Gaz,
Thread, and I will buy them all. No? I will buy them all.
Gaz, Thread, yes or no?
It's up to the device makers. Frankly, I think it's whatever the device makers utilize and make the most of. I don't think the average consumer is going to give two hoots about which protocol it works on. People like us may do. I'm completely ambivalent, to be honest with you. The market will take us where the market takes us. It'll be a Betamax, VHS type conversation about where it goes, and you know, I think that's probably a very that's not a very detailed answer, but that's my honest opinion. Is I think it's a big shrug of the shoulders at this point in time, because I don't think it's that important a crossroads that we're at, really, because there will still be proliferation of more protocols.
Sure. Okay, brilliant. So before we wrap up, BT, any recent videos, any upcoming videos, anything you want to give a plug for your YouTube channel?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have a couple of videos up my sleeve, and those all will be related to how to fix your Synology installation of Home Assistant. I'm looking forward to that, but it's sometimes it's very easy to record a video. It may look a bit complex, but it's very easy. Those ones, the community, there are a lot of people that know a lot of stuff. So even if you just say wrong words, a lot of people will come back and haunt you with that wrong word you said. I had one typo in last video, and I received so many messages about the typo on the screen. It really doesn't matter because everything was correct and there were subtitles and blah, 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 but there was just one typo. And I'm really very careful when I'm recording videos like that, because it can impact the devices where people keep their documents, family photos, and things like that. And I really do not want to mess up anybody's life. I myself have lost one hard disk with the photos from my wedding, and I know.
I'm surprised your wife still lets you have a smartphone.
Yeah, so I know.
Surprised you haven't lost your wife.
Yeah. What are the consequences when you have a serious data loss? So those will be my future videos. I really do hope that people will enjoy them. I will not be discovering, anything that's not already known, but I will try to compile it in 2 videos to show you what directions you can go. And of course, thermal printer. After that, thermal printer.
I love the thermal printer. Love it. Gaz, where can people see you popping up these days? Slide into people's DMs.
That's pretty much it. If you're on any social media platform, sooner or later in the smart home world, I'm going to haunt you. I'm going to try and bully myself into something that I started probably 18 months ago and didn't take any further due to confidence, frankly. So if you guys can do it, surely I can. No. So I created a YouTube channel. The best thing I created about it is the title, Don't Fear the Gear. I still think that that's really quite a good title for the channel, and that was created on and predicated on the fact that, as I said, I'd consumed a lot of smart home goods early on and made just about every mistake that you could possibly make in terms of building a smart home. And I think that there's a space in the smart home YouTube world for somebody willing to show how idiotic they were in building their smart home and how to avoid those kinds of problems and stop that fragmentation that you tend to create early on when you're excited by all the devices that are out there. So I will not promise, but I will try to make a follow-up, an actual video on the Don't Fear the Gear YouTube channel to go with the trailer that I actually made for the channel that has slides. Yeah.
Fantastic, good. Right, very, very last thing, a mystery question for each of you. And you've got 30 seconds each to answer that question. Right, 30 seconds. BT, you like your Shelly devices. You have 30 seconds to tell me why Shelly should rename the devices to Isabella. Go.
I don't know. Really, sorry, no idea. No. I do love them. Sorry, no idea how to go that way.
There you go.
But really, okay, Kat, I have there is a grape called Isabella. We call it like that. And it's a very sweet type of grape that you cannot make wine of, because if you drink too much of that wine, you will go berserk. And that's my favorite wine. So, my favorite grape. Sorry, not wine. Grape. So changing name to my favorite grape name would be good idea. And I support that.
I love it. Shelly, if you're listening.
Then you would become the Bearded Drinker, not the
Bearded Drinker.
I would buy that Isabella device. Gaz, for you, so Paul Hibbert and Brian from Automate Your Life like to do the Riker maneuver. Can you tell me within 30 seconds why both of them are doing it wrong and tips as to how they can do it better?
I think both of them are doing it wrong. I think that whilst Paul, in my humble opinion, did a better impersonation of it, Paul is 5'6", so I can only imagine he did it over some doll's house furniture. So I don't think it technically classes as an actual Riker. And I think the less said about Brian's version, the better. And I'm hoping that I've got to 10 seconds now, so that I don't.
Ding.
I have to say how I do it better.
Well done, brilliant.
Let's mute myself.
Paul's dollhouse furniture, I love it. Well,
he's never going to talk to me again.
Both, thank you very much. I appreciate this was the inaugural episode of the Smart Home Collective, but I do appreciate you coming on, spending the time, giving me your views and your opinions, and giving a shout out for what you're working on. Thank you both very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I hope this maiden voyage doesn't become the Titanic.
Let's hope not.
Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so that you can be notified when my newest conversation comes out. And if you've got any suggestions for guests that you want me to interview, please feel free to find me on Twitter at the SH Collective.